Welcome to Monday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live here on Giants.com as well as the mobile app. He's Paul Dottino. I'm Lance Medow with you for the next 60 minutes. And Big Blue Kickoff Live is presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. Multiple ways for you to interact with us here on the program. You give us a ring, 201-939-4513. You can also hit us up on Twitter, hashtag GiantsChat, and can directly follow both of us. I'm at Lance Medow, one word, last name, Medow. He is at Giants, WFAN. A tough loss for the Giants at MetLife Stadium on Sunday as they fall to the Jets 13-10 in overtime. There is a lot to unravel. Really, all three facets of the team can easily be put under the microscope. And, Paul, the area that I want to start with is on the defensive side of the ball, because I know Graham Gano missed multiple field goals, and everybody wants to play the coulda, woulda, shoulda game about maybe going for it on 4th and 1. But the bottom line is, despite the ball not bouncing their way with respect to the field goal, you're still putting the Jets in a position to have to get into field goal range, something that they had failed to do for the majority of the game. This Giants defense kept Zach Wilson and company in check for about 59 minutes and 30 seconds. Unfortunately, the final 30 seconds of the game did not necessarily go according to plan. And Garrett Wilson and Allen Lazard each make 29 receptions. Paul, those were the longest catches for each of those players.
Yard receptions.
Yes.
You just said 29 receptions. I'm like,
okay.
Wait a minute.
Well, I was referring to obviously the 29.
That's what I thought you meant.
Yes,
that's what I thought you meant.
That each one of them made those catches, and that was their longest catch of the game to that point. Yep. So you saw things, unfortunately, break down on the defensive side of the ball, and in the blink of an eye, knowing they only had 24 seconds left, now all of a sudden the Jets realistically have a shot to send this game to overtime. And the other thing that I don't know if it's being talked about enough is Kayvon Thibodeau's penalty, even though it was declined, that was critical because it stopped the clock after one of the receptions, and you know the Jets were out of timeout. So you could say, okay, everything that needed to fall into place went the way of the Jets, but a Giants defense that had been extremely stingy, unfortunately, could not make the stops that we saw for the bulk of this contest.
Where do I start? All right. Here's the thing. Every game, every head coach, win or lose, will go back and dissect it. And he will find out that there are at least a handful of very, very small, detailed errors that were made in the game. And if they win, nobody ever even talks about them or sees them because the team won and they get glossed over. Now, the coach may talk about them to his players, but the fans and the media won't because they never saw them. When you lose, every one of those things gets magnified 10 times over.
Absolutely, yeah.
So let me just say that some of the things that the Giants did in this game are not unique to them or to a loss. It just so happens that they become extremely noticeable when you do lose. One of the very small, simple things, and Micah McFadden was asked about it earlier on the conference call. I'm going to go beyond the fact that those catches were made because the other team has to make those catches. They deserve credit too. Sure. The throws were made. The guys got open.
They made two of his best throws, by the way, the game.
And they made the catches.
Yeah.
Okay? That's fine. But talking about things you can control, Giants' last drive of the fourth quarter, Barkley slips on first down and 10, gains only 7 yards when he probably could have gained 9 or maybe even the first down and given the Giants a new set of downs. Today, and asked about that, Brian Dable said, yeah, he was holding the ball tight and he lost his footing and he slipped. It's a tiny thing. Makes a huge difference. We talk about Pinnock blitzing on one of those bombs that you just talked about. I wrote it down. It was the 3rd and 9 from the 40 when the pass interference was called on Banks.
Okay, so that was the catch that Garrett Wilson
in overtime.
Made. Yeah, in overtime. To a different drive. Okay, I just wanted to make sure we're on the same page.
Right.
Yeah, this was the 3rd and 10 from the Jets 39. Garrett Wilson was fighting off with Banks. He makes the catch, then he slips, and then all of a sudden gets back up and runs for the first
Right.
time. Yeah.
Pinnock is within a hairline of getting the sack. He comes in unmolested off the edge on a safety blitz. and he's just a fraction of a second away.
Well, these little things add up, sure.
You know, again, I don't know the timing of the penalty, exactly when the flag came out. Would Banks have grabbed him if the sack had occurred? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe the penalty would have nullified the sack anyway, and it wouldn't have made any difference. Yep. Hard to say. Hard to say. But these are the kinds of things that a millimeter makes a difference. I'll give you another one. Okay? How about when Adoree Jackson makes that tackle right before the spike at the end of the game? Okay? Lazard catches the pass. If he drags Jackson another yard or two, the clock runs out.
They don't have enough time to.
They don't have time.
Set. Yeah. Well, that's why it was perfectly executed. I mean, you couldn't have asked for better timing.
But what happens? He makes the catch. Jackson immediately tackles him, gets up. Jets run up. They spike it. Boom. 1 second. Well, imagine that. Imagine that. Now, if you go back and you look at the tape, I don't know. It's tough. It's McFadden. McFadden was asked, did your defense get up too quickly on that catch? Jackson did pop up quickly. You don't want to get a delay of game penalty. Well, that's for sure, because now the kicker has an easier time.
Of course, yeah.
So
you could be penalized for pulling a maneuver like this.
You can be.
Yeah.
But that kind of gamesmanship happens in the league all the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get called for the 5. Sometimes you don't. It's a very thick gray area of gamesmanship.
Sure. That would be the last thing, though, I would
here's
put
the
on
problem.
the laundry list of things.
Oh, it's on my list.
Well,
because here's the problem. Yeah. It's a 35-yard field goal. Okay? That's a cakewalk anyway. I just assume.
Especially for Zerline with
right.
Him. Yeah.
I just assume take the chance that I'm going to get hit with a delay of game and give Lazard the business, hope that the clock runs out and the game is over. And if they're going to throw the 5-yard penalty, so now he kicks a 30-yard field goal instead of a 30. What's the big deal? Chances are that 5 yards is not going to make a difference. Well, I'd rather run the clock out and take a chance.
I get it, Paul, but that's viewed as a Bush League move. That's what it essentially is.
No, it happens in the league all the time.
Well, I'm not saying that.
Happens in the league all the time.
No, but what I'm saying is it'd be viewed as a Bush League move, though, if that did happen. If somebody intentionally sat on a guy, didn't get up, that's how it would be viewed. Yeah.
Look, this goes back to Belichick in Super Bowl 25 against the Bills, when the Giants defenders were specifically told, make sure you take your time after every tackle, because they wanted to slow down the red gun offense. That goes back to 1990, Lance. Don't tell me about Bush League moves.
No, I'm not, Paul.
It's part of the game.
I'm not saying that it would have been wrong or they would have automatically been penalized. I'm saying how it could have been perceived.
Who cares?
If it happened. Okay.
If you win the game, who cares?
Sure. But I'm just saying that.
And it's been part of the game for a long time.
And there have been other players that have been called out for similar maneuvers in which would be viewed as a Bush League move.
All right. In any event, these are the kinds of millimeters that we're talking about that can change the entire outcome of the game. So, and that has nothing to do with the pass that was thrown or the pass that was caught. I will go to one other play that just continues to boil for me, and that is on the final pass interference call. It's another third down. If they don't get this play, completed, and it turns out to be a penalty, which is
3rd and 5 from the Giants 45 we're talking about.
I don't know that they're kicking a 63-yarder. Zerline's capable. He's already had multiple 60-yarders in his career.
They'd have something to think about.
I don't know if they're kicking that field goal. I think they're probably playing field position. They're probably punting the ball. Okay? Well, I'm standing right there when the play happens where the receiver is, Taylor. I see the quarterback get flushed. I see him make his heave-ho, and it's a terrible throw.
Oh, it's underthrown.
It is a wounded duck.
But that makes no difference.
The ball seemed to take 5 hours to come down. The whole time it's in the air, I'm saying to myself, That's underthrown, incomplete. Giants going to get the ball back. When suddenly, Adoree Jackson, a veteran, a good player, a smart player, a guy you would not expect to make a simple mistake, doesn't even look over his shoulder to check on the ball.
Well, that's why that's an automatic flag.
It's an automatic flag.
That happens on every similar play.
Because you see the receiver, and if you go back and look at it, the receiver knows the ball is underthrown and actually turns to face Jackson.
Well, because you should show that you're trying to make an attempt to go back to the ball.
Right.
Yeah.
At that point, Jackson's already running full speed. He does not look for the ball, and he bulldozes the receiver on a ball that's between 3 and 5 yards underthrown.
Yeah.
Look, I've never played cornerback in the National Football League, so I don't want to be too harsh on Adoree Jackson. But the truth of the matter is, had he just been able to glance over his shoulder, which is a move that I would have expected him to make, he would have been able to perhaps turn and pick off the pass, at least knock it down without running full throttle into the Jets wide receiver, and then there's no pass interference call.
Well, you give the official something to think about at least.
Right.
Under those circumstances.
Instead,
because you're making a play on the ball yourself.
So he plows through. It's a 30-yard penalty, and now the Giants are cooked. Again, from the ball being in the air, I'm saying there's no way this is going to work for them, to all of a sudden seeing what happens. Unbelievable change of events just while that ball was flying in the air. I will also tell you, Morstead, the punter.
Yeah, number of big punts by him.
He dropped 3 punts that died inside the Giants' 5-yard line.
Yeah, field positioning.
Are you kidding me? I could send any NFL kicker out to the field right now and say, give me 50 kicks and drop 3 of them inside the 5. And even Fiegels, the best coffin corner, in the business, had the most of all time. If you don't want to say he wasn't the best, I'm not going to argue with you, but he had the most of all time, right? The most coffin corner, the most inside the 20.
Well, because he lasted better than anybody else.
Okay. But it wasn't just that he wasn't coffin corner. That was the old thing you did in the 70s. Dave Jennings was a coffin corner punter. No. This dude, mortar kicks practically.
Yeah, dropped it in the right spot.
That they would just drop and within 1.5 yards die. Are you kidding me?
That's football.
The list of millimeter things that went wrong for the Giants yesterday all become volcanic eruptions inside your stomach when you wind up losing the game. And yet, if you win the game, almost all of them, if not all of them, get brushed under the mat, and you never even think about them again.
Well, I mean, listen, it goes both ways. I mean, in fairness, the Jets are having similar conversations, too, about whether or not they were in position to not even have the game get into overtime and finish it earlier. I mean, think about it. The Giants scoring drive, the one that they got into the end zone, Paul, that was aided by 2 unnecessary roughness penalties.
Yep.
And Jermaine Johnson, the one that he had, was completely unnecessary. Forward motion is stopped, and he comes in for a late tackle. So, things like that change the course of the scoring for the Giants, and then the Giants field goal.
But again, those were legit penalties.
Oh, I'm not
much
disputing,
like the pass interference was legit penalties.
I'm just saying that we could have this coulda, woulda, shoulda game on so many different elements in the
That's
context.
exactly my point, though. I just spent 10 minutes telling you that that's exactly every team in every game has a list of those.
Well, especially when we're talking about a 13-10 low-scoring, grinded-out affair where it's a game of field positioning, not a lot of scoring opportunities, field goals here or there. It's huge. And that's why these little things come back to bite you. But the game yesterday reminded me of, and that's why I wanted to start with the defense. Not to say that the defense is the only reason why they lost this game, but there was still ample opportunities to prevent the Jets from getting into field goal range, regardless of how you feel about what transpired on offense. And it reminded me of, Paul, I don't know if you recall, earlier in the college football season, Miami played Georgia Tech, and Mario Cristobal and his staff did not take a knee. They had the running back run. Even if you didn't see it.
Yes, I did.
So the point is, the running back fumbles the ball. So actually, coincidentally, similar to the Giants game, there's about 24 seconds left, and now Georgia Tech's got to go the length of the field. Miami still has a lead. And what happens? 2 plays, 74 yards. Guy gets behind the defense. They give up the touchdown. And everybody after the game is having a debate. Well, if you took a knee, the game's over. We're not talking about it. And that's fair. But I still point to, but the defense, all they had to do was prevent Georgia Tech from going 74 yards, and they also win that game too.
Right.
So that's why, as much as everybody wants to talk about the offense and the field goal here or there, I still say the defense had an opportunity to finish, close the door. And even Kayvon Thibodeau talked about that after the game. He said, we finish on defense, and we're not debating here what happens with respect to Graham Gano or Saquon not slipping and so forth.
All right, you're going to make me do this. I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to do this. You're going to make me do this now.
Okay. I don't know where you're going with this.
The game never should have been that close to begin with. Okay?
In terms of at the end of the game?
The end of the game. It shouldn't have come down to that.
Okay.
Okay? Obviously, you had Gano missing a field goal earlier.
Sure.
But at the end of the first half, the Giants had already basically decided to, and Brian Daboll admits to this, they decided they were just going to be ground and pound. They knew the situation with the weather. They were going to play the field position game. They were going to rely on their defense, and they knew they had, Tommy DeVito making his NFL debut at quarterback.
Yep.
For all of those reasons, they decided to play ultra conservative.
Yep.
All right. Keep that in mind.
Sure. 100%.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, what are we talking about? Alternative plays are you going to come up with here?
Well,
like, what are we getting at?
You get the ball with 2:28 left in the second quarter at the Jets' 42-yard line.
Yeah, this was off the fumble, the bad exchange between, and they didn't score on that. Correct.
41-yard line. I'm sorry.
Yeah, 41.
I'm off by a yard.
Yep. We won't hold it against you.
Okay.
Yes.
You get nothing out of that.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Well, what do I say about takeaways?
Okay.
What do I say about that?
You got to convert them. Okay. That's on the offense. That has nothing to do with the defense failing on the final drive of the fourth quarter.
That's fair. Sure.
That's on the offense. You get the ball first down on the other team's 41-yard line, and you not only do you not get anything.
You didn't even get a field goal opportunity.
Here's what makes it worse. Here's what makes it worse. You go 3 and out.
Yeah.
You give the ball back, and your defense says, we're stopping them. We're giving you another chance.
And they got a 3 and out against
and they get the ball back to the offense again.
Yep.
So with 41 seconds left, the Giants have the ball at their own 48 at midfield. So what have they lost? They've lost only 11 yards of field position.
Sure.
They have 41 seconds left from their own 48-yard line. And what do? Nothing. 3 plays.
Correct.
Boom. Go into halftime.
Okay, but I'm lost in terms of what you're
That is another scoring opportunity.
No, but at that point, you're not in position to kick a field goal, though. That's why I wouldn't make that argument. I agree, it's lost opportunities, but here's the thing. Look at what happened on both of those possessions, though. You had Tommy DeVito got sacked on each one of them, okay? And then you had a delay of game, which was intentional, though, because they were looking at that point. So you can't necessarily hold that against them. But you had a sack on each of those possessions, Paul, which backed you up behind the chains.
The second one was an incompletion.
Yep.
Okay. Then a sack.
Mm-hmm.
Then a scramble.
And it's 3rd and 15.
Right. Yeah. Right. Well, absolutely.
But what I'm saying is, based on how the game was playing, the chances of then converting a 3rd and 15 was not very high. Yeah.
I'm not saying that you had to convert the 3rd and 15 at that point, but here's what I'm saying. Okay? What I'm saying is you got the ball in golden field position twice in the last 2.5 minutes of the first half. Your defense did double down duty to get you the ball twice in great field position.
Yeah.
And you did not get anything to show for it.
Huge missed opportunities. Yeah, there's no doubt about it.
See, that to me, that right there is where, in addition to the earlier opportunity where they had to settle for a field goal on their first possession.
When they got the strip sack of
When
Zach
they got
Wilson.
the strip
Correct.
sack.
Yeah, and they were right in the red zone, right there.
Left 4 points on the board right there.
Sure.
So you leave those 4 on the board. Then you got 2 golden opportunities to at least get something, and you get zilch.
Yeah.
To me, that's why I'm not killing the defense for the last second, field goal that tied the game in the fourth quarter, because the Jets had 17 offensive possessions. 17. Do you know how many offensive possessions a team usually gets in an NFL game? Anywhere between 9 and 11. Usually.
Well, when everybody goes 3 and out,
Okay.
you increase the volume.
Okay.
Yeah.
You gave the Jets 17 chances on offense. Okay? Zach Wilson did hardly anything all day. Hall did virtually nothing all day.
Yeah, other than that 50-yard
outside of the dump, catch and run,
Yep.
which the tackling was not good. It reminded me of Noah Fant against Seattle.
Sure,
The tackling was not good on that play.
And that's on the defense.
Okay? That particular play is. That play is. But you give the Jets 17 possessions. Even a blind squirrel could play quarterback. And if he gets 17 possessions, sooner or later, he's going to wind up having something fall his way, and they will get points. You can't do that. You can't give the other team 17 possessions.
Well, what also is noticeable about that is on the first 15 possessions, they got 157 total yards, the Jets. On the last 2, they got 104 yards in those 2 alone. So to your point, okay, a blind squirrel eventually is going to, get the ball to bounce their way, but they were also getting explosive plays, Paul, on those final 2 drives, and that was the bigger killer. It's one thing to give them a 10-yard catcher. That you're talking about 2 29-yard receptions.
Well, they didn't earn the 30-yard pass interference.
No, of
before
course.
the field goal.
No, but that
was a
down.
gift.
Sure, but that's a chunk. That's a big chunk of
Sure,
field
it's a chunk
positioning that you're giving up. So,
But
that
again,
proved to be extremely costly.
You give them 17. Look, if I give you 17 cracks at anything, sooner or later you might succeed on one of them.
Well, and that's why I go back to, and this is not necessarily a knock against the defense. I'm with you. The defense played a really good game. Look, you go up against teams, you hold them to 13 points, even with overtime being played, you feel as if you're going to win that football game. But timing is everything. And when a game is that close and it's back and forth, it's not so much of the big picture of things. It's when the game is on the line, how do you perform? And unfortunately, when the game was on the line, the defense had some of these miscues and mishaps. And that proved to be the ultimate difference maker as opposed to how good they looked in the first 5 possessions or whatever it may be. Let's open up the phone lines as we move forward here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. 201-939-4513. Just a few reminders before we get to the phones. In terms of the Giants Huddle podcast, you could subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. You could also head to giants.com/podcast. As far as single tickets go, the 2023 NFL schedule is officially out, and single game tickets are still on sale. Don't miss the Giants at MetLife Stadium this season. You can visit giants.com/tickets to secure your seat, and the Giants official connected TV streaming app. Giants TV, it brings you original video content and game highlights on demand and direct to Big Blue fans. Giants TV, it's free. It's on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, as well as the Giants mobile app. All right, let's head to the phone lines. We check in with Vinny in Florida here on BBKL. What's happening, Vinny? What do you got for us?
Hey, Lance, that was a heartbreaker yesterday. I tell you, I have not felt that bad about a game in a regular season game since the fumble against the Eagles. What was that, back in the 70s?
Sure.
You mean Matt Dodge did not make you upset against Deshaun Jackson?
Herm
Come
Edwards, Larry Zonka.
I get it, but that goes back to the late 70s, 78, as opposed to what happened with Dodge and Deshaun Jackson. Come on now.
Yeah, I'm just remembering how I felt. But I'm going to give you 2 observations about the end of the game. Then I'm going to take off the air. I'm going to give you 3 observations moving forward, okay?
Sure.
So the first thing I wanted to say about the defense in the game, played a great game. I'm out of state, so I didn't get the YouTube package. So I'm watching these games at a sports bar. But I was yelling, "You're only rushing 3 guys. Put pressure, Wink." I'm yelling in this bar, "Wink, put pressure on him.
When?
Play under pressure."
Which series are we talking about?
Right, with 24 seconds left in the game.
Final
I
one
said,
of regulation he's talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't do this. Don't go. Now, they said they didn't alternate how it is, but they only rushed 3 guys, so they did alternate. They were giving him trouble all game with pressure.
On the last the last 2 plays, they rushed 3 on first down. They showed a 4-man front on the second play, and they dropped out one of the guys.
Yeah.
So they showed a 4.
Put no pressure on him.
They showed a 4, and then they dropped one out, which is common in the NFL. You will show one look at on the front, and then you'll drop somebody. I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, you guys mentioned how Zach Wilson struggles with pressure, and I think the Giants' defense proved that all game. The other thing I want to make.
Well, they did get heat on him. That's the thing about it. They did.
Yeah.
No, the last play, they got heat. That ball was a dying duck.
Yeah.
Well, he used his legs.
I'm sorry. The dying duck was the last play in overtime before the field goal.
Yeah.
The throw to the other throw to Lazard.
Yeah.
He was able to get some mustard on that ball,
Well,
but he did move around a little bit.
That's what I was going to say. I think Wilson deserves credit because he used his legs to extend those few plays at the end.
He got off the spot.
He was being chased. He just was able to extend the play.
So it's they did get some movement into the pocket there. Don't just say they were 3 guys and they did nothing.
Yeah.
That's not fair either.
Well, yeah, and I'm going to give you these 3 things I observed, but I don't know for sure because I didn't have the opportunity to rewind it. But I thought the clock ran out before that tying game, and it just seemed like someone stopped that clock a little early.
I didn't see any of that. Yeah, I don't.
I don't yell because you guys know better than I didn't have a chance to rewind it.
I thought the clock was fair.
Yeah, I didn't think there was anything wrong with the clock.
That's not one of my nitpicks this morning.
Here are my 3 observations. I'll take these off the air and look forward to
Well, you already made 2 of them. Wait, I'm losing count
That's
here.
all right. Go
you made
ahead.
2 observations.
Go. What do you got?
Yeah.
Here are my 3 observations. First, Kevin Thibodeau has arrived in the NFL. Even when he had only 1 sack in the game, I saw he was positioned well. He was stopping guys for losses. He was making tackles. I think he's arrived in the NFL. The second observation, and you guys mentioned this about punt returning. It was such a pleasure, and he averaged 9.3 yards per return and did not. He only took 2 fair catches. So I'm saying to myself, these guys say get a first down every punt. He averaged 9.3 yards. I think it's so important to have that. And then my third observation is Jason Pinnock is just about on par with what Julian Love was last year. I think he's playing a great safety position. And, hey, let's win next week and hope we don't have heartbreaks again. But I'll take that off the field.
Appreciate the call.
I wish Pinnock, instead of trying to shoulder Breece Hall on that touchdown, I wish he had tried to wrap him up instead. In my mind, that was a potential tackle that was waiting to be happened. And he just tried to shoulder him over, tried to knock into him. And I wish he had tried to wrap him up. I'll just say that.
Outside of that, though, I think Pinnock has really good anticipation skills. You could tell he's a smart, savvy player. And similar to the caller's point about Julian Love, Julian made a lot of those hustle plays when he was here with the Giants.
Oh, yeah.
And those definitely stand out about Pinnock. So he's got a really good feel for the game. And I think you could tell that whether or not it's a splash play or not. So I think that's well taken. I mean, Kayvon wasn't just about the sacks. I mean, the guy did everything yesterday. He had 9 tackles, 6 solo, 3 sacks, 3 tackles for loss, 3 quarterback hits. So it wasn't
fumble.
Correct. He did everything to try to be as disruptive as humanly possible. Unfortunately, and I know I pointed this out, but the penalty jumps out to me only because, once again, that served as an additional timeout for the Jets on that last possession. But that doesn't necessarily take away from everything else that he achieved and accomplished. All right, let's head back to the phone lines. We got James in Georgia with us here on BBKO. What's happening, James?
Hey, what's going on, fellas?
Hi.
Tough loss. So I got a couple of things. First, that was really just terrible coaching by Wink and Dayball. Paul, you answered me on Twitter last night on last caller just spoke on where they were preventing the toss to the sidelines and only rushing 3. When they're on their third center, you send the house at them every play and make them make a mistake. It was a mistake to only send 3 guys, and that's what beat them.
Well, but before you go any further, I want to be factual. I want to be factual here. The second to last drive, when the Jets had the ball with 2:38 to go, I logged it. Jets snaps. They faced a 4-man front, a 5, a 4, a 4, a 4, a 5, and then on third down, they only faced a 3-man front, and Thibodeau got the sack to give the Giants the ball. So the Giants did nothing out of the ordinary on that possession. Then with 24 seconds left, when the Jets get the ball back, they go with a 3-man front on the first snap, a 4-man front on the second snap, and dropped one guy out to turn it into a 3 on the play. So that's that. When you drop a guy out or add a guy late on a delayed blitz, that's all about deception. That's part of the strategy. Deception's a strategy. They didn't just line up 3 guys and say, okay, we're showing you what we're doing here. Part of the deception is guys mugging. They call that mugging. When a guy is up on the line, looks like he's going to be coming, and then he decides to drop out. That's called a mug in coaches speak. So they mugged on the second play. It wasn't just a straight 3-man rush. In overtime, following Jet snaps, they went with 7. Giants did 7, 5, 5, 7, 5, and 5. How is that
in overtime?
In overtime. So
right.
how's that prevent?
Different.
How's that prevent?
I'm gonna ask you about overtime later, but it shouldn't even got to overtime like you said earlier. Shouldn't even got to overtime.
I agree with you.
But in overtime,
the Giants should have won the game.
But in overtime, if you're going to play ultra conservative and you're not playing the score, why not put your defense out there first and play field position?
Brian Daboll was asked that this morning. He was asked that this morning.
He said they debated it.
What did he say?
He said they debated it, and they decided the defense had just been out there at the end of the fourth quarter, and they thought it was best to give them a chance on the sideline and let the offense go out. He said they thought about it. They discussed it, and this was the decision they made.
And then if you let the offense go out, why not attempt to score? Why just go out there for a 3 and out?
Well, but they did. They were actually throwing the ball on that first possession of overtime. They weren't running it, if that's what you're referring to.
Holding against Bellinger, right? Holding against Bellinger on first down, which right there, now you're back to first and 20 at your own 15.
It's a 10-yard penalty.
That automatically takes out a huge chunk of what you were going to try to do when you start the drive with a 10-yard penalty. Come on now. Be fair about this. Be fair.
Right. But on both of the other plays, he doesn't look downfield. He checks it right down to Barkley. If you're not going to give him a chance to at least throw the ball downfield, then why not go, for one, wildcat the rest of the second half and wildcat in overtime?
Well, in overtime there, I'll be frank with you.
He never looked downfield, and he just
because at first, he's thinking. I'm sure him and Kafka are thinking 1st and 20 from our own 15. They went 2 straight flat passes to Barkley, and then on 3rd and 21, they were going to try a bubble screen, and it got tipped incomplete. Yeah. I'll be frank with you. At that point, I would have had no complaints if they just ran Barkley into the line and said we're going to punt the ball away, because throwing the ball in that situation is not very productive. If you're going to play your defense and field position, the other parts of the game, at that point, I'm getting Gillen out there and I'm saying, look, Jamie, if you got a 65-yard bomb in your leg, this is the time we need it.
Yeah, you want to give him as much wiggle room as possible.
That's what I would have done.
Yeah.
So you can criticize the short passes there, but I'm not so sure.
Play calling in general for how they outthunk themselves on this one by not even giving them a chance to throw at all in the second half. Shouldn't even came this close.
I agree with you on. It shouldn't have been this close. Giants should have had this game packed up before the 2-minute warning. I agree with you.
Yep.
But the point is, things were not necessarily out of character late in the game compared to what happened earlier in the second half, James, and appreciate the phone call. I think that's the main takeaway. You could say, listen, overall, you should have maybe looked to air it out. That's a fair point, but it's hard to criticize what they did at the end of the game when it was pretty much in line with what was happening for the majority of the second half.
That was the narrative that you had already established.
Correct.
And I will say this. I could understand if you had been on the field and felt the emotion of what had happened at the end of the fourth quarter when they allowed the tying field goal, I could understand not wanting to put that defense right back on the field again. As much as if it was a video game, I would do it. Without a doubt. If it's a video game, I'm playing field position. I am letting the Jets have the ball first so that I can win the field position and I can tilt the field against them if it's a video game. But this is not a video game. The NFL is real. You should have seen those players when the Jets tied the game. It was hard.
Momentum absolutely swung.
It was hard. The emotion was absolutely all with the Jets at that point, and I could understand maybe not wanting to put my defense right back on the field, 45 seconds after the Jets had just tied the game and burned you. That's a psychological and emotional puzzle that you have to sort through. I understand why Dable took the ball.
Well, and here's the other thing. I mean, just look at the lengthy drives that the Giants put together prior to that, too. You're expecting something at that point, which really never came to fruition. Outside of Paul,
Barkley was running the ball well in the fourth quarter.
Well, but I'm talking about outside of the drive to start the second half. They went 3 and out, 4 plays and punt, 3 plays and punt, 10 plays for 40 yards. They ultimately punted. And then 4 plays, 9 yards, but that was set up on a short field, keep in mind, because the Jets turned it over on down. So, I mean, that doesn't count in terms of moving the ball. I'm talking about into scoring position. That's what I'm emphasizing here.
They had it in really great position twice at the end of the second quarter. I hate to go back to it, but that's why you've got to score when you got those chances.
But the point is, one of them we established was off a turnover, though. Keep in mind. Okay? So I'm talking about in overtime, no turnovers here. We're just talking about, I'm operating, if you go down the hypothetical road of you give the Jets the ball first, let's say you force a 3 and out. Even if you get the ball at, I don't know, your own 35-yard line, you want to say, the Giants up to that point had not proven that they themselves, without assistance, could consistently get even into field goal range to make the Jets pay. Well, that's my point.
In the last 7 minutes of the game, Barkley, I see, had, runs of 5, 9, 6, 9, 4, 6. Barkley was gouging them pretty good with the run of the fourth quarter.
Well, and that,
he was.
The ones you're referring to, though, came on one drive, the majority of them.
2 drives.
Well, but to me, his biggest runs came on that 11-play drive. If you break down every single one of his carries, the one that they ultimately scored the touchdown, that was when they were really eating in to the Jets defense, is the one that I'm referring to.
Well, that's in the third quarter.
Correct, yeah.
No, I'm talking about in the fourth.
Which drive
in the fourth quarter? They get the ball with about 9 minutes left, and Barkley has a 5, he has a 9, he has a 6, he has a 9. He's gouging them.
I'm bringing up the drive.
It's right here.
No, I understand. I want to visually see what you're talking about. So you're referring to the 10-play, 40-yard drive with 6:43 to go.
And that's all Barkley.
This drive started at
Breida had 1 touch in that drive, and DeVito had one run in that drive. It was all Barkley. He was gouging them.
And that drive started at the 3.
Yes.
And they got down to the 43-yard line.
Yes.
And then that's where the drive stalled. That's the one that you're referring to. Just making sure that we're on the same page.
That's an acceptable. That's an acceptable drive.
That was outside of the 11-play drive. He was running, but the bottom line is they still didn't get into scoring position though, and that's what I'm emphasizing here. But Paul,
what I'm saying is, if you're Coach Dable, and you have 2 things you're thinking of probably there. You're thinking, A, my defense psychologically and emotionally just got burned for a tying field goal. So that's first. Second thing you're saying to yourself is, Barkley in this fourth quarter has shown some extra life again. He's got a second wind, and he has just helped basically dig out a 40-yard drive.
Sure.
I understand.
And I have no issue with them taking the ball first, too.
I thought that's what we were just arguing about.
I'm not arguing that. What I'm saying is I was the caller's point.
He loses me on these things.
The caller's point was that they should have given the ball to the Jets first. And I'm with you saying that they didn't move the ball into scoring position very well. That was what I was emphasizing. You were just highlighting another point so that you're just assuming they were going to score. In overtime, you need to get into field goal range.
Yes.
The point of getting the ball in overtime is not to just go 3 and out so you can give the ball back to the Jets.
Well,
the goal at that point is to score and try to end the game.
If you get the kickoff to start the overtime, to go by your reasoning, and you get the ball at the 25 after a touchback, and you put together the previous drive of 40-plus yards, or roughly 40 yards.
Around there, yep.
That gives you a chance at the winning field goal, doesn't it?
Correct, yes.
So you're on board with me.
I had no issue with them taking the ball first.
We agree.
Yeah, I had no problem with that. I was just saying that the Giants, all I was saying is they had not proven, if you take that drive away and the one at the beginning of the third quarter, those were the exceptions where they actually moved the ball to a certain amount where you could say you can maybe get into scoring position. Everything else was 3 and outs or off of turnovers and short fields. And that was my main point with respect to what was going on. Let's head back to the phone lines. We got Coach Marvin on the line here on BBKO. What's happening, Coach Marvin?
How you doing, Paul? And
hello, Coach.
And how you guys are doing?
Yeah, we're doing all right.
And
what's
Lance,
on your mind?
You too, Lance. Real quick, the overtime, I probably would have kicked. The reason I would have kicked, we had -9 yards passing. If they kick us deep as they did and we get it on our 25, I just couldn't see us driving.
Well, and that's my point. And that's what I was campaigning for.
And that's, I knew where you.
So that you did want to kick off.
Yeah, I had no problem.
I had no problem with him taking it. Is what I was trying to tell you.
And I don't either.
Okay, yeah, that's what we're all on the same page. We're all agreeing. Yeah,
right. I'm not criticizing the coaching because it's an emotional game. When you play in this game, you're going to have times you're crying, you're laughing, you're mad, you're sad, you're angry. All those emotions get played into a 3-hour game.
Sure.
So you're playing all of that as you're playing. So I'm not going to question. It wasn't the coaching in this game. It came down to the players executing down the end, and the special teams on each side won the game. Their special team won that game. Our special team lost that game. That's what it all boiled down to. I mean, there were some things that happened in the game that was it was a terrible game. It felt like the third coming of a miracle in the Meadowlands again. I don't have a problem with them going for the kick. I don't have a problem with them rushing 3. I thought Thibodeau played an outstanding game.
Mm-hmm.
They just made some plays down the stretch, and that's going to happen in a 3-hour game. They just made those plays, and we didn't. Paul, you was talking about the corner. What do they do when they beat like that? When do they look back? You was making a comment about it, but you wasn't sure. What happened, if you look at that play, he was beat. I think it looked like it was about 5 yards beat.
Yep.
So when the corner is beat that way, we're teaching him, in my cases, we're teaching them, you can't look back. You got to catch up to him because that's going to be 6 if you don't. Because once you look back, you slow down.
Right.
That's fair.
No, that's fair, Coach. But here's the problem.
If you slow down, it's 6.
Yeah, but here's the problem. The receiver for the Jets had already started to spin around because he saw how underthrown the ball was. Yes. I'm telling my corner that when you see that, you got to be suspicious that something's going on here.
But it's tough in the moment.
I get it.
We're teaching them to run and catch up.
I know,
So
and I've never played corner in the league. That's why I'm trying not to be critical of it. I'm just saying that it's a point of irritation. But I can't rip the guy for it because he's a hell of a player.
Right. He did what he could do because he thought it was 6. You have no clue what the ball is. One, you got a helmet on in there. But if you're running with him, you run the route. As soon as you feel that there's time for him to throw the ball because it's all timing, as a corner, you do look back, and usually good corners know how to do that.
Sure,
they know how to run
and
the
he's
route.
good enough to do that.
He was in recovery mode. That's what he was in.
But
Yeah.
he was beat. He was in a defense mode. He could not do anything offensively to stop it because you're teaching them. Once the ball in the air, I tell my kids, who ball is it? It's not the offense. It's not the defense. So you're going to determine who gets the ball.
I think
you got a chance for it.
Matt Ryan on the telecast, I think he said 6 out of 7 times when you see that play and the ball's underthrown, you know the corner's going to wind up running into the guy and drawing the flag.
Yeah, and the offensive player senses that
it's going to happen most of the time.
That's why it was an automatic. Immediately when he did not turn around, you knew the ref was going to throw the flag.
He was cooked.
That's a no-brainer.
No doubt.
It's a no-brainer call. Yeah.
The other thing, they saying Thibodeau's out, coming out party. I don't see it that way. I think Thibodeau plays the way Thibodeau plays. He looks like he does when he was in college at the top of his game. I just think it's the way they use Thibodeau. Thibodeau is not used in a manner as a strict rusher.
Correct.
He's not, because his responsibilities are different than most edge rushers because he do different things. If you put him in a position that he's a all-out rusher, I think that's the type of player you will see rushing the quarterback. He has so many responsibilities that it's not just rushing the passer. So I think we get a misread of Thibodeau's talent because he does so many different things.
And Wink made that point when he spoke to the media previously. He said they're going to try to deceive opponents, and therefore they're going to sometimes take him out of position off the line of scrimmage and make it seem like perhaps he's coming, but instead he's going to back off. I mean, that's what the scheme calls for. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. But, like I said, it came down to the players. -9 yards. I can't believe we had -9 yards. And that was the part that really crushed me, that Barkley played outstanding. I thought the offensive line did pretty good for the
they had them run blocking the entire game. They didn't have to pass protect too much. So, I'm sure you ask any, Coach Marvin, you ask any offensive lineman and you go to them and you say, we're going to have you run forward the entire game as opposed to backpedal. Something tells me the offensive lineman are going to say, Coach, sign me up for that.
Yeah.
I will gladly take that game plan.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because they can be aggressive. They can they can lean on those defensive players and wear them down a lot easier than because you're backing up. You're going backwards. He's coming forward. He's faster than you are. So it's a difficult position. Any of those positions you play is very difficult to play. It's not easy as it watching on TV. It's just not. But before I go, I'm about to go. I have a friend watching the show for the first time named Yasin Carmichael. The last name should sound good. Yes, that's Harold Carmichael's nephew.
Really?
So I'm glad he's watching the show.
Harold was about 6'8". Okay,
and
6'7", 6'7", 6'8". Thanks, Coach. And back in the day in the late 70s when he was playing for the Philadelphia Eagles, he was an absolute terror and a matchup problem. If he were playing today, holy smokes. In those days, you could do a lot to the wide receivers. Okay?
A lot of different things could happen.
Oh, man. Yeah. Now, today, you got to give this guy, after 5 yards, you got to let him go. Forget about it. Carmichael was an absolute – he was one of the guys, as a young Giants fan in the 70s, you had to absolutely, literally have fire for that guy. It's like Harold Carmichael just made you turn into the Incredible Hulk. He was a guy you had to really, really dislike because he was so good. And there was like no way you could stop him. That's just the way it was.
Former Eagles wide receiver who actually recently was just inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame as part of that extensive
Deservedly
class.
so.
Sure, absolutely. All right, let's head back to the phone lines as we move along here. We've got Wilson in Roxbury. What's happening, Wilson?
Hey guys, how are you?
We're doing all right. What's on your mind?
Listen, before I get to my point, once the game went to overtime, I knew everybody knew that it was either we were going to tie or we were going to lose. And the Giants were not scoring a touchdown, and I knew 90% that the game was over. Having said that, I'm going to say something, and I don't want to offend anybody. I don't want to disrespect anybody. That's my opinion and my opinion only. If yesterday they didn't show you what kind of disgrace Brian Dable is as a head coach, that he's the worst head coach in the NFL, then I'm watching. Then obviously I'm watching. I don't know what I'm doing. I've been watching football for 45 years, and I don't know what I'm doing. To do that, to do what he did yesterday, it's beyond unbelievable. I put that loss strictly on him, and I put the Buffalo loss strictly on him. When you coach not to lose and you kick field goals when you have 4th and a foot, you don't deserve to be a head coach. I don't care if you can have the 5th string quarterback. Teams, you got to at least function like a professional football team. You were one hit away from what happened. You were Tyrod Taylor is fragile. You were one hit away. If you have that guy as your backup quarterback, I mean, you cannot play the way he did. Forget about the last.
Well, in fairness, they were still 30 seconds away from winning the game for what you're pretty much criticizing, though, Wilson. And if the result is different, it does change the perspective a bit.
Okay, listen. The reason why they were in that position was because the Jets commit penalty after penalty.
And I referenced that earlier. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So having said that, the booth, everybody was saying, it's 4th and a foot. Even if you kick a field goal, there's still time. A lot of things can happen. Just end the game there. You cannot play scared. But forget about that. What about the one before that Gano missed? It was 4th and a foot. He kicks a field goal, it's missed again. Then even though you're playing with your backup quarterback, I mean, just have this guy drive back and just throw it out of bounds. You cannot play like that. You cannot play the way he played. You cannot coach like that. That's not a professional coach. And I can't believe that. Obviously, all the guys that call you, I mean, I don't know if I'm the only one. And obviously, you guys cannot say what you say. You guys work, and I understand that. This is my opinion only. But you cannot coach that way. You cannot coach that way, and then.
All right, hold on. The last 4th down at the end of the 4th quarter, the rationale to kick the field goal, and by the way, I would have preferred going for it. I don't second guess anybody. I never have. 41 years. All right. 41
He's talking
years.
about the other one, yeah.
All right, 41 years of covering the National Football League. I never second guess anybody.
Okay.
I'll tell you what I say at first glance, and I'll stick with it. Even if it's not popular, I'll stick with it. Now, I would have preferred going for the 4th down. But having said that, there is a lot of logic in kicking that field goal. The logic is really simple. The Jets are not going the length of the field to score a touchdown.
Well, they haven't proven that they could do
They're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. And if Gano hits that field goal, okay, you've now taken Zerline's 60-yarder out of play. He's got multiple 60-yarders in his career. You've basically said, hey, Zerline, that 60-yard weapon you got in the sideline, he's out of it. He's out of it. You got to go to the length of the field. So I understand kicking the field goal. I may not have done it, but I get it. It makes a lot of sense.
Paulie, I understand what you're saying, but you cannot coach like that, Paulie. You cannot coach that.
No, you can't coach by following logic. You just admitted that it was logical.
No, the logic was to actually get a half a yard. That's the logic. But
the logic is to take. The logic is to do whatever you can to give yourself the best chance to win. And if you're taking away the potential 60-yard field goal that ties the game, that makes a lot of sense.
Well, but Wilson, let me throw this hypothetical. Hold on. So if let's say they do go for it, okay, they go for it and they don't get the inch that you're claiming is so simple to get, and the Jets then still take over. Okay, maybe it's a difference of yardage because they don't get it a little bit earlier and closer because they would get it based on the missed field goal spot. Yeah, but you're still giving them the possession, and your defense still needs to make stops though under those circumstances. So the game is far from being locked and over.
Let me tell you something, Lance. Listen. You can go either way, and listen. You can. Monday morning quarterback is the best thing because you can. I could have done this. I could have done that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the game as a whole. The game as a whole. You cannot coach like that. If you're gonna run like it's Alabama against Murray State, then you should not be in the NFL. You should not be a coach in the National Football League. If you have a backup quarterback that you don't trust, what the hell you have him for there? Why didn't you get somebody from the street? You were one hit away. Everybody, look, we can disagree.
All right.
Well, this guy, to me, has been a disgrace.
All right.
Winston, we'll let you go on that note.
I did want to answer him.
Well, you could still talk about
it. In terms of the quarterback situation, we didn't talk about this earlier in the program. Maybe we should have. Brian Daboll said this morning that he learned after the game from the medical staff that Jones had been cleared and that he would be able to practice on Wednesday in preparation for the Raiders game. Okay? The problem was, in terms of the quarterback situation, because he's criticizing now Daboll about not having a backup quarterback. Well, first of all, the general manager controls the roster, not the coach. The coach can't hire a backup quarterback. So let me just make sure you understand that part. But the rule in the NFL is once you submit the official injury report on Friday and you say a player is out, he is not eligible to play in the game. Otherwise, you are breaking NFL rules. If you do put him in, you will get sanctioned by the league, potentially not only fines, but even potentially draft picks. You cannot do that. Daboll said he was told by the medical staff on Friday, Jones is out. So he listed him as out on the report. He then gets told after the game yesterday that, oh yes, we saw him prior to the game between the time that Friday was listed as out and the kickoff, and he was cleared.
Sunday morning, essentially. Yeah.
It's too late.
Yeah.
It's too late. You don't have a choice. So now what exactly do you want Brian Daboll to do? Medical staff told him he's out. He listed him as out. He can't reverse it.
Well,
what do you want him to do?
Here's the other thing. If you really want to go down the hypothetical road, let's say the door was still open. Let's say he was listed as questionable instead of doubtful, okay? Who's to say that the Giants then activate him? They may, even if he gets cleared, they may say, listen, Daniel did not take reps with the first team this week.
Who knows?
He was running the scout team. We're still
that's a hypothetical, and I'm not willing to go there.
I understand that, but we can't just assume, is all I'm saying, that just because he does get clearance and the door was open, that they would have then had him part of the 48 active players.
The point is, for the venom that's being thrown at the coach for the quarterback situation, the point is he doesn't have control over that once they list him as out on Friday.
Yeah, there was no option.
It's out of his hands.
Of course, it was done. Yeah, at that point. So, but the caller was bringing up with respect to about Tommy DeVito being on the roster and the level of confidence. And he was actually, Brian Daboll was asked about that again on the call earlier today. And he gave a very similar answer to what he said after the game, which was there were a lot of factors that they took into consideration. Whether it was one, meaning it was not conducive to be a pass-happy game, and they felt confident that Saquon could do the heavy lifting, and he told the team that in the locker room. That was one factor. Number two, how well the defense was playing. Okay, why are we going to now give the Jets chances to benefit from field positioning? And once again, you were in the driver's seat because you had the lead too. So, why are you going to then give, once again, the Jets gifts? I think there's arguments to be made on both sides of the equation, but I think the way that the Giants viewed it was, we are in position to walk out of here with a W in a low-scoring, grinded-out affair, and our defense hasn't given the Jets any breathing room. And unfortunately, in the final 30 seconds, the Jets' offense got the breathing room, and that's what backfired on them.
I told this to John on the postgame, and you'll appreciate this. He's a basketball guy, and so are you. It reminded me of the old NCAA four corners offense that North Carolina used to run before they had the shot clock.
Sure.
We're going to take the air out of the ball, and we're just going to suffocate you to death right through the end of the game. That's basically what the Giants tried to do. Look, I'm not going to pull any punches here. I said it on the postgame show. I think they needed to do a little better than 8 3-and-outs in the second half that, didn't take any more than 90 seconds off the clock, which then allowed the Jets to compile 17 possessions. When you give a team, again, blind squirrel can be a quarterback. You give that team 17 possessions, at some point, they're going to crack it.
Well, you gave them extra at-bats. I mean, that's what you did. Yeah. Well, plus also, not that the Jets had an overwhelming amount of statistics, but it's interesting because you look at the Giants, they wound up running 8 more plays than the Jets in the game. They had, though, little over 50 less yards in total. So the Giants, even though they had more plays, they still only averaged 2.8 yards per play compared to the Jets for 4. And that adds up, Paul, right, over the course of the game. That goes back to what you're talking about. An extra first down here or there versus a 3 and out.
That's it.
An extra minute you take off the clock. So when you do want to play the philosophy of we're going to grind it out, we're going to suffocate you, you still want to make sure that you're taking more air out on each one of those possessions.
Correct.
Because
absolutely
24 seconds versus 23 seconds versus 22 seconds could have very well been the difference based on them being able to spike the ball. And that's, I think, what we're getting at in terms of the ebbs and flows
Just think about
of
that.
the game. Yeah.
Seriously, one of those 3 and outs turns into a 3-minute drive instead of a 90-second drive. Game's over.
Yeah. And those things add up. And unfortunately, the Giants were on the wrong end of their game with the Jets yesterday as they fall in overtime 13-10. They now turn the page, and up next is a trip to Vegas as they will collide with another AFC opponent, the Las Vegas Raiders. As that is going to wrap up Monday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live. Today's episode is part of the Giants platforms everywhere, as well as Giants.com/podcast. For Paul Dottino, I'm Lance Medow. Stay locked to Giants.com for all the latest. We'll be back up and running again on Tuesday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. We will speak to you then. Have a good one.